Ali, I'm going to start with you. Tell us what it's like there at CPAC today.
Well, Alicia, I'm going to speak kind of in low tones because the former president is on stage behind me. But really what we're hearing is exactly what you laid out in your introduction, the continued repetition of this lie about what happened in the 2020 election. And look no further than the CPAC straw poll for how that's manifesting among this self-selecting group of conservatives, but even more broadly, as I've been attending conservative events across the country that are similar to this and also outright Trump rallies, this has become a top issue for the party. And there's also a reward structure in it for lawmakers who go along with this. Because if you look into that CPAC straw poll, many of the people who rank highly on those lists, people like Ron DeSantis and Ted Cruz, have backed up or at least not directly condemned this lie about the 2020 election. So there is definitely a reward structure in this. In terms of Trump's hold on the party, though, you see it from the messaging perspective, especially as he's starting to take a much more public posture over the course of these next few weeks and months leading up to the midterm elections. This is the message that he is choosing to lead with, a backwards-looking message about what happened in 2020, hoping that that's enough red meat to actually fire up the base to go vote again in the upcoming midterm elections. That may be a different plan than what people like the RNC and other Republican groups would like to lead with, but undoubtedly Trump is the person with the biggest ideological reach here in this party and easily the biggest megaphone, still definitely the head of this party. And so what he says in forums like this one really matter, especially from a messaging perspective for Republicans who want to play the politics and want to retake majorities in the House and Senate.
So, Daniel, I want to take a look at that straw poll. Trump just beat Florida Governor Ron DeSantis 70% to 21% in that straw poll. DeSantis would hold a comfortable lead over the others if Trump did not run. CPAC hasn't always favored Trump. In 2011, he was actually booed for suggesting Ron Paul was unelectable. This follows reporting from Gabe Sherman at Vanity Fair that showed Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on a collision course. What does it say about how this conference has evolved under the influence of Trump?
I mean, it's always been a conference for the base and the activist wing of the Republican Party. Trump hasn't always been the favorite, but as activists have learned to like him, he's gained popularity at CPAC. I think what's really important here is that we know that in 2024, if Trump does not run, Ron DeSantis would be the early favorite of the activist base of the Republican Party. That is not prophetic for who will get the nomination, but it does tell us about one major wing of the Republican Party and where they're leaning right now.
Yeah, Matt, a group at CPAC is distributing cards with a 7-point plan for reinstating President Trump in, quote, days, not years. The plan involves somehow installing Trump as speaker and then ousting Biden and Harris. I mean, it is absolutely bananas. I don't need to tell you that. Your sense of how mainstream this idea is within the Republican Party and what it is going to take to extricate that idea.
Well, I think at this point in time, you can replace the C that stands for conservative with crazy, because that's what this has become in this. I was thinking the other day, what are conservative values today? If this is what it represents, I thought conservative values stood for integrity, honesty, the Constitution, our democracy and all that. This party, and the CPAC represents the GOP today, no longer stands for any of that. If Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Ike Eisenhower, or Ronald Reagan showed up to that meeting today, they would be thoroughly booed at this point in time. It's seeped in. It's part of the ecosystem of CPAC. It's part of the ecosystem of the Republican Party. And that's what the fundamental problem today in democracy is. We have two legacy parties, but only one that currently supports democracy as it stands and is willing to deal from a place of facts. And I think that's what we have to all struggle with in the media and in politics. How do we deal with a political party that is no longer honest?
I want to drill down on that, Matt. I want you to take a listen first to what Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger said earlier today on Meet the Press.
So to all of my colleagues in politics, let me say this to you. You either have to be a zombie for the MAGA belief system, whatever that is today or tomorrow, it varies every day based on Donald Trump's whims, or actually stand up and tell your constituents the truth.
I just wonder, Matt, if there is anyone who that message, that perfectly reasonable message, is actually landing with.
I mean, an accurate message that supports our democracy, if it lands with anybody in the Republican Party. My guess is, and I've looked at the numbers, it's about 10 to 15% of the Republican Party would be receptive to that message. Not enough to win a primary, not enough to even finish second or third in a primary. That's the problem today. What Donald Trump is, what Ron DeSantis is, what all of the other people that are spreading the lie and doing all the things attacking our democracy, including here where I live in Texas, they represent the mainstream part of the Republican Party today. Adam Kinzinger is a unicorn in the Republican Party.
Ali, Trip Gabriel of the New York Times writes that the big question of the 2022 midterms is how will the suburbs swing? It is a crucial voting bloc that soured on Trump in 2020. We've talked a lot on this show about how the suburbs are changing demographically. I wonder, how are Republicans at CPAC taking aim at these folks? Do you get a sense that any of their messaging is tailored to that suburban audience?
No, because it's very similar messaging to what former President Donald Trump used throughout the 2020 election, and he ended up with lower margins in the suburbs than Joe Biden did. That's a key part of the Biden coalition, and that piece in the Times today was really apt. Clearly, former President Trump read it because he released a statement about it, but really it presents the balancing act for both of these parties here. Democrats trying to show what they can do with power, not just having power in the White House, but also in both houses of Congress. Republicans, I think, taking the opposite approach. On a national level, conferences like these that set the messaging tone, they are clearly digging into the red meat that's not the substance that parts of the party would prefer them to focus on, things like the border and jobs. That's not the focus necessarily here. People walking out of this room and rooms like it come away talking about a rigged election in 2020 that didn't actually happen. What's happening, though, on state level legislatures, and this is where Republicans, I think, are going to start pointing to what's happening across the states as proof of what they can do if they're given power again in the midterms, is they're looking at things like state legislatures like here in Texas, doing things like passing critical race theory bans, or at least trying to, in this special session, restrictive voting bills happening in places like Texas, Florida, Georgia. Those are the places where Republicans have to look for the incubators of what Republicans can do if they have power, because on a national level, on a messaging level, a lot of it is backwards looking, while Democrats are trying to show, hey, we have power right now, we will actually get things done. Of course, if this is why the infrastructure push is so important, because it could prove that bipartisanship still exists in Washington, or it could prove that Democrats don't know what to do with power while they have it.